Aloha everyone and welcome to another Carbon 60 video. I am your host, Kay Elmer, and in this video I've got a very special treat. I had a great conversation this morning with Philipp von Holtzendorf and Ian Mitchell, and we talked C60 for about an hour and covered a lot of the things that are going on in the industry in the last year, with a specific attention to a recent study where someone had tried to replicate that original rat study done by Body and Musa, in which they discovered that there wasn't any longevity in mice. And so we talked about that. We talked a lot about too some of the controversy that's been in the industry for the last year with regards to the products that are out on the commercial markets. Various studies are showing that they don't match to what the labels are saying in terms of the amount of C60 in the product. So that, that's an interesting development. Both of these gentlemen have been in the C60 industry for quite some time and are very knowledgeable about C60. So, we talked about that. We talked about solvent-free C60, about purity of C60, and it was just a really great talk. And these gentlemen are so gracious to have spent that time with me, and I just really appreciate it. And I know that you'll find this conversation interesting. So, without further ado, I want to say thank you for stopping by and visiting and listening to this interview. And I want to say thank you specifically to Ian and Philip. Thank you so much for your time this morning. I really do appreciate it, and I really enjoyed our conversation. Now, for any of you that want to learn more about C60, we have a Telegram C60 chat group, and I have a blog called the Tinkers Academy. All the links that were discussed in our interview are in the video description. So if you want to come on over, learn a little bit more, got questions about C60, you're more than welcome. So again, thank you everyone, and enjoy the interview. Aloha. Hey, aloha everybody, and welcome to another C60 chat. I am so thrilled to have Ian Mitchell and Philipp von Holtzendorf with me today to talk about C60 and some other stuff that I think you're going to love to hear about. And without further ado, these gentlemen both have tremendous amount of things going on, so it's really hard to intro them, but I'll just let them intro themselves. So how about, Philipp, you want to go first? Just who you are for anyone who hasn't heard your name before? And what do you do?
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Kay. Thanks for having us. I'm looking forward to the panel here. It's going to be very interesting. Yeah, so for the people that don't know me, I'm from Germany originally. I live in the U.S. with my family. And, I used to be in corporate Europe, if you will, and corporate America, then afterwards. And already as early as the year 2000, actually, that was really where certain events in my life started to make me really think about life much more deeply, that it really wasn't about just getting up in the morning, working your day, and then going to sleep, and that's pretty much what you do for your life. And I started to really look into the energetic nature of our lives and the universe and everything, and started to become really interested in this inner journey, if you will. And that's what I did in parallel, if you will, while I was still working in corporate. Was in leadership positions of small and very large companies. And at some point, I arrived at a point where I really couldn't do that anymore, be in big corporate and be aware, be more aware. So I started to be self-employed, running my own business, and all my interest had been into finding things and mechanisms, new technologies that help humanity to heal on certain levels, whether that's energetic work. So I've myself participated in countless energy and shamanic workshops and all of that. My wife, actually, she was born with the ability to see aura, and she never really lost that divine connection, if you will, this conscious connection, and didn't forget who she was, if you will. I went through the whole forgetting. And yeah, at some point really started to only do what comes from deep within, where I feel, okay, this is something that brings me joy and that also helps other people. And that's how I arrived on one hand at C60, and then on the other hand, which is my other part of what I do during the day, is the Leela Quantum Tech, And yeah, so this is really what I'm trying to move forward, try to help people with that, and certainly also be a little bit of a voice to tell people about it.
Awesome. That's great. I'm really so just to clarify to all to the audience is like I just want to from a C60 standpoint, Philip's company, the C60 Labs, you're more of you're a wholesaler more than a retailer, right? Because the on your website you've got products, but you sell primarily through resellers. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. Yeah,
Okay.
you would not be able to purchase anything off the
Directly.
website,
Right.
off
Okay.
that website, just because we work mainly in Europe with a lot of um, um, small size sales partners, I would say, because we don't work with large companies that sell our products, and also in Taiwan, as well as a little bit here in the US as well. And yeah, then we have another shop that's kind of our own shop where Roman Hafner, the healer from Europe, and my wife and I, we offer
And
some energetic webinars and
right.
things like that. And there we do have some of the products that you could actually purchase directly, but we don't market it. It's just there and people can get it there, but we don't actively promote
Oh,
the
okay.
products there.
Okay. And the cool part is, and you also is that you sell, and just as a plug, we have a 660 Telegram chat group, and Philip has always been so gracious as to offer the group that if you're a member of it, a discount on raw C60. So it's not just C60 retail products, but C60 powder itself, group discount. Go through Telegram, and then what's really cool, and then so we can really expand the discussion here. Um, is that the products that are under C60 or Leela C60 are not just oils for ingestion, but also the topicals and also some of the encapsulated C60 products. So it's really well rounded in terms of the various C60 products out there, both wholesale and retail. So that's really cool. Thanks for being on. Thanks for spending having some time for us today. So the other person on our panel, our C60 panel, is no other than Ian Mitchell, and I am so happy and thrilled to be able to finally have a chat with you here on the channel. So, Ian, for people who may not know you, how would you describe what you do?
Professionally curious.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been in the C60 space for going on 9 years, give or take, actively working with it and developing products and researching and producing different patents. I'm sure people have looked at the patents I've done on anti-metastatic behavior using C60 and using C60 and conjugating it to saccharides and using different preparations with all sorts of other enzymatic compounds. I've just really tried to look for issues that people had and how I could solve them. Initially, the first was a longevity issue for me, which was how I arrived at working in C60, period. And I owe a doff of the hat to my father, who pointed me in the direction of C60 as a research topic. And since then, I've done a lot of research. People have seen that, my patent portfolio, probably from LifePet originally, where I worked on life extension of dogs and cats and horses, and a lot of the other things. It's really expanded greatly. Again, as I said, it's about curiosity for me, but I'm just trying to see how I can apply technologies to make life better for people. It's actually, that's why Philip and I are kindred spirits in a sense, is because we're really working towards the same goal, which is bettering humanity. And for me, it's been mostly applied sciences that have been doing that. I'm lucky enough to be hired to do consulting work in pharmaceutical development and things like that. And so I get to work on all sorts of topics and see all sorts of different technologies, and am able to, pick and choose and cherry pick from one thing to another, and use it kind of additively to look at different ways to benefit people. So specific to C60, I have multiple patents in the space. Cancer, hair growth, life extension, and a couple, actually about 4 or 5 others that will be coming in the next year. I no longer am actively with any specific C60 company. So at this point, I'm just purely an applied researcher. I own a stake in the company that I founded in 2014, Live Patent C360, but I'm not actively working with them. I'm just running my own site, Mitchell Sciences, which is just coming up as of October, to take on all of the different things that I want to research. And in a nutshell, that's it. Professionally curious.
Yeah. No, I I would say you're also a just an avid biohacker, anti-aging biohacker from all the stuff that you do. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I've been lucky in that a lot of people in that space were really welcoming. Given some of the study, I know you've seen the P53 knockout study where we
Yeah.
got a 93% extension in lifespan, which was really similar to Fatih Musa's, where he got a 90% extension, which I think a 3% delta is something that's not random, that's very specific. And yeah, I actually do work with Bulletproof. They've hired me to develop things, and the biohacking space is great because I do it on myself. I'm constantly injecting myself on a daily basis with various peptides. I have a full scale peptide synthesis rig in the lab, fully automated robotic peptide synthesis rig. So I get to play with all sorts of crazy biohacking stuff.
Oh yeah, cool. I've been recently into peptides myself, and then Philip and I are doing a self experiment. By the way, yeah, I got to ask Philip, how are you doing on this? But we're taking Fullernols. We just he started before I did, but just trying out Fullernols as a new, new health supplement to see how that works. And for those of you guys listening at home, Fullernols is a C60 derivative. But so yeah, I guess we're all like that. And I'll just do a quick intro of myself. This is how I explain myself. Anybody who doesn't know me, I am the Homer Simpson in the nuke plant of life. And that's just pretty much, I have a day job. This is my hobby. And I don't know why, because if you would have told me 3 years ago that I could make 30 plus videos about a molecule, I would have just laughed at you. But somehow I just got curious, started writing about it, or not writing, but doing videos about it and research. And yeah. And the only thing I've ever run into that's been problematic was when I went against the Shungite crowd about claims
Like running up against a rock, I suppose.
Well, of all the videos I made, right? Yeah, definite a rock. But all the videos I ever made, I got the most horrific trolling and negative comments about when I basically explained to the world that the science literature does not support any of the claims about Shungite being related, having the benefits of C60, but you go to any Shungite site, they will say it's all about C60, and you've actually gotten, this is what's horrible about, you got people on eBay selling Shungite powder as C60, and I just, and half of it's silica and all that stuff, but yeah, the Shungite crowd, I swear. Anyway, but thanks a lot, guys, for making a little bit of time. I'm really glad we could just be here. We got a little bit of an agenda that it was on the screen in the beginning, and let's just jump right in. There's been a lot of real interesting developments in the last year regarding C60 and the industry, and I just really would love to get your guys' opinion about it. So, if you don't mind, let me jump in with the first question. Which is, and for those of you who follow my channel, I did 2 videos on, quote, what have we learned in the last 3 years, meaning since C60 really kind of took off in 2017. It's been 3 years now, and we went from, I think back then, Ian, we had what, and even Leela, you started after the 2017, right? After the body study got publicized more into the general market, but I
think there were only 4 or 5 of us. I think,
because I do this pricing guide. I don't know, I think you probably read it, right? Once a year I could do a market study, and I remember my first market study was November of that year, because I just went shopping. Because after the Cliff High went on Sarah Westall and announced, and talked about the study, it went crazy. And so I remember I went to Purple Power and bought my first bottle. And then I started okay, where else can you buy it? Because it sold out overnight. And I remember making a list, and that's what was the first publication. And I think there was like maybe 7 maybe 7. That was all the websites in the whole world that sold C60 oil. So, and it,
You know, it's interesting that
yeah,
that particular podcast with Cliff on Sarah's show.
yeah.
You want to talk about getting trolled pretty hard. I hopped on the thread because I was so pleased that people were actually doing research on it, and somebody else had given it a little light in the darkness.
Yeah, yeah.
I made some comments and I referenced my knockout study because it had already been done a couple
Oh,
years
you
prior
did
to that.
already. Okay.
And sweet Jesus, boy, I elicited just the ire of some of the people. I remember one comment saying, "That's not possible because if it were, it would be a tremendous discovery and you would have published it everywhere." And no, I assure you, it's totally possible. And yeah, it's really cool, but you don't always publish everything you do. You know, it's not. Unfortunately, that's not the world we live in, and you guys know this. I mean, you can develop things. You know, I have one patent that I just finished with a university, and we're keeping it very much close to the chest because you don't necessarily want everybody to see what you're doing because it just crushes you. But boy, that was it. It was the same experience with your Shungai crew. It just kind of went left.
Yeah, that's weird. Well, I've learned one thing though, and I love Sarah Westall. I just, but I've learned do not comment on her videos. Well, when
She has a vocal audience.
Oh yeah, she was on YouTube. I haven't checked out any of her, BitChute or any of these other sites she's on now, but I do subscribe to her. But yeah, do not comment on her YouTube videos. That was kind of like, man, you jump in there and say anything, yeah, it gets wild. Or Cliff High videos. Oh, cool. Hey, okay. So the question that I've got is some of the developments in the last year. I think the most ones that stand out is let's chat about this October. It got published in October. It was a study that tried to replicate or claims to replicate the body study with mice, though, instead of rats. And it came out with findings. And then one of the findings was interesting, which is they compared 4 different products and none of the products matched the label. I'd like to talk more about that one. But the other finding obviously was they didn't detect any longevity. So, I was just wondering, both of you guys, I mean, what do you think about that study as it relates to the fact that, Body and Musa already kind of shown the world it's possible. And then especially you, Ian, you did your own rat study, as you just mentioned. And then now we've got this mouse study. So where do we go from here? Or what are your thoughts on that? Either one of you.
I'll give the very quick answer here because, I'm actually not familiar in too much detail with that. And I would really refer to Ian on that. I mean, I can just say that, and I'm happy to go into that in a little bit more, like what we've seen over the last several years amongst our customer base, sales partners, friends, family, and ourselves is just absolutely amazing. And yeah, so I think there have been a lot of good studies, and I'm really interested in Ian, hearing what he has to say about that specific study, and then maybe mentioning his own that he's done. I think it was with mice, though, right?
I'm trying to find it right
it was
now.
P53 knockout mice. Yeah. So interestingly, I had, of course, received that study as soon as it came out from a ton of people, people I knew and worked with and people I don't know, just got my email address and sent it to me. And the most curious portion to me is that their findings seem contradictory. And, I know Fathi Musa had findings that showed a 90% extension in the lifespan. With the P53 knockout mice that I did, the entire cohort on average had a 93% extension. So 93 and 90% are pretty small. It's a tight variation. And I wouldn't think that a 3% delta is something that just occurs by coincidence. And I can also say with definitive certainty that when you look at cells in culture, you can find a tremendously varied output in ATP levels. And I do these at the university every week, and we'll look at ATP levels and things. And when you put C60 into a cell culture, the ATP production goes through the roof. And what the cascading effect of that is normally the body has senescent cells, which are damaged cells. Some people call them zombie cells. And they run around and they generally don't die. They just kind of keep moving, which is why they term them zombie cells. But the detrimental cascading effect of that is that 8% of the cells, if they're affected, can cascade and affect about 40% of the cells. So you really want to get rid of senescent cells, and C60 has the effect by virtue of upregulating ATP production in the mitochondria. Your body triggers mitophagy, which is the process whereby it stimulates lysosomes to go in and break apart the damaged mitochondria so that energy production as a whole goes up. And it also cleaves out and triggers autophagy on a lot of the cells that are just in the standard sense senescent. So you end up with an organism that's far healthier in aggregate. And the rationale behind saying, well, we've rebuilt all of the small components and the larger components are performing more poorly, logically doesn't make sense. And based on what I've seen just in terms of ATP production, every week that I run these tests and do the analysis, it doesn't make any sense. Now, you can very easily screw up an experiment with C60 just by exposure to light. And the idea that you could get, photonic degradation and cause degraded oxygen byproducts and things like that, that's perfectly plausible. I don't know that the guys at ICOR consistently work with C60 enough to know that, I would think they did a cursory check on the literature, but I wouldn't think that they play with it enough to know all of the different techniques that you really need to pay attention to so that you don't end up with some sort of photodegradation and degradation byproducts. Because I think even in that study, they referenced the fact that the degradation byproducts caused an issue and didn't increase longevity and caused some toxicity, and there was proliferation of tumor growth. And I have seen multiple times, both in vitro and in vivo, where we'll look at actual animals that have tumors and the tumors go away. That's not something that's, fairy tale science. I've seen it so many times, and it's repeatable both in the lab and in a clinical setting with animals. I just have a difficult time with with thinking that there is no aggregate extension in the lifespan.
Yeah, I read this and I tried to really try to gap it to the body study in terms of preparation, the type of oil, all the materials and methods. It seemed like they'd followed the same process, but just with mice instead of Wilstar rats. But yeah,
no, you're right, Dave. But on the surface, you can just do something very simple, like expose it to standard lighting, or keep it in a reactive environment in terms of just exposure to air. You can oxidize things if you leave it exposed to the air too long. If you purge it with nitrogen and keep it in an inert atmosphere, and you don't allow light at roughly 420 nanometers, which is just kind of standard light or the blue part of the spectrum, to hit it, you're far better off. But if you don't account for that, you do end up with light dependent toxicity.
Right. So there's factors that even though you follow the methodology and the protocols, there's factors beyond that that will affect the outcome of a study. Like I remember you were telling me when you were doing, or sorry, not telling me, but on multiple interviews. By the way, I'm probably the only person other than your wife that has an Ian Mitchell playlist on YouTube. So, one of your actually, I'm such a nerd. I'm such a nerd. By the way, if anyone wants to see it, it's public. Go to my YouTube channel. But one of you were talking about your P53, and you discovered this. They changed the food to the mice or the rats, right? And they completely messed up your results because just the food that they were feeding them was changed by some lab tech guy that wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, and it caused a hyperbolic spike in the tumor. We had done an inoculation with a tumor to look at the growth, and you let the tumor extend to a certain burden, and then you introduce your therapeutic agent. And this was a lab, actually. That wasn't the P53 study. This was with normal mice that were we used immunofluorescence in the different cancers, so we could count it literally down to a cellular level and see how many cells we had left. And we were doing the experiment, and it was going great. I was thinking, woohoo, I've done it. I've crushed cancer. And it was going down at a precipitous drop, 35% week on week. And then it stopped and went hyperbolic, and we had to sacrifice the animal very shortly, like 3.5 days later. And it was literally just a change from the ketogenic diet that I had the animal on, which was a Harlan product, back to a standard, mouse chow, and dead, 3.5 days. Wow. Had to sacrifice it. It was truly, it was the one time where I thought, there, but for the grace of McDonald's go I. You know,
Yeah. Well,
it really
geez. Hey, well,
kind of bad.
if you're a mouse and you're listening to this video, hey, you know what? Stay away from the standard mouse chow diet. It's the SMD version of the American
Yeah,
SAD diet.
yeah, it's exactly right. Yeah,
Yeah.
for all the mice listening,
Yeah.
they're
Do not
cowering in their cages.
do not let the lab tech feed you McDonald's of mouse chow. So
Exactly.
that's amazing. That's amazing. So yeah, so that's kind of what I was thinking, because what I was saying in my video about this was like, hey, one study does not is not conclusive. We need more. So along the more, are you planning anything that, like, you already did the 50, you're P53 now, but are you planning to do any other type of C60 longevity studies? Because I know that.
Yeah, actually, I
Okay,
am.
yeah.
Yeah, one of the things, people have been asking me lately, and I get this a lot, what realistically do you think is a cap on the lifespan? And at this point, knowing what I know now, in terms of how to modulate, antioxidant responses and mitochondrial function with C60, and coupling that with enhancement with peptides and, modulation of endocrine secretions, I think we're in the range where easily, 300, 400% extension in lifespan is doable. So yes, I am actively working on doing something to that end, because the idea of just getting a 90% lifespan extension is not all that flashy to me anymore. I know that can be done.
Yeah.
I think we can actually push the bounds greatly.
Oh, that's cool. That's really
And
cool.
I would actually confirm that here from a different perspective, because, we know energetically that this is actually something where it would normalize, right? So 300, 400% increase doesn't sound strange at all to me. Rather, it is strange to see that, we die off when we're like 75 years old. There's a lot that is being done, that there is unhealthy people, right? And just from an energetic perspective, we're also moving into a time where some of those old games, if you will, are dying off. And it's coincidentally now happening that people like Ian and a lot of other people around the globe are finding new, interesting technologies and techniques and substances, and molecules for that matter, that can have a great impact on that. So I'm extremely positive on that as well. Also really related to the stuff that we're really doing.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I think that, because I'm really as equally as well into biohacking, anti-aging, and it's amazing that it's a twofold or multi-prong effort. And the first effort is you've got to stop poisoning yourself and allowing yourself to be poisoned and irradiated. So everything from EMF protection to, eliminating heavy metals from your diet and all these other things. Like everything from, eliminating all the chemicals in your house, eliminating all the toxins that you're exposed to the poison air, the poison water, the poison food, all that stuff. To me, that's where you start before you start getting into, grinding on C60 and resveratrol and N&M and following David, Sinclair around and doing what he's doing. And so I really think that's true. You've got to really stop. You got to take care of your meat sack on one hand before you try to, make it. You can't get it to live longer if you don't stop poisoning it. So yeah, definitely good point. Okay, so guys, so we talked about this study here, and I think that so the next thing is we're gonna, I guess like what you were saying, Ian, was continue to study the concepts of lifespan and see if you can prolong it further. And then, but I just was wondering if you had heard about, I think SES had announced that they are doing a longevity study. I think they're doing one on humans, if I recall. And so, I mean, I don't know if you've heard of that study, but they just started it last spring. So
I hadn't, but
yeah.
it's that's actually fantastic. I think I will probably be one of the only people that's around to see the results of the study.
Yeah.
The three of us can talk about it 100 years from now.
Yeah. So yeah, because they announced they announced they're doing a longevity study. I think they're trying to replicate the body study first, but also no, okay, yeah, right. Sorry, I'm sorry. Just there's so many things that are in my head about this, but yeah, they're replicating the body study, and then Ken from Purple Power announced that they're doing a human study. So they're actually doing a human study. He had announced that they're doing a human study. Chris announced that they're doing another rat study. So it's real interesting. We've got people in the industry that are stepping up and adding to the research and not just, making claims and making products. So it's awesome to see so many people come together. And again, just this one, for anyone who read this and is worried and that you're going to give up on C60, just remember, one study is not conclusive and it's a body of evidence. And right now what we have is we've got a couple of studies that say yes, and we've got one study that said no, and there's a million factors that could change that. So real good stuff. But so now,
as a group, though, we're all very passionate about what we're doing, because someone asked me literally about a week and a half ago, why isn't a study being done on EMF and the blocking effects of EMFs physiologically from using C60? And my response was, it's not financially viable. Studies are generally done by people with an agenda, and the C60 crowd, not totally different, but I think a lot of us are really so genuinely intrigued that we want to know. So we're all independently funding all of these studies ourselves just to get the data.
Yeah.
And Ian, this is maybe not for the interview, but after this or tomorrow, we should connect in regards to the EMF stuff, because I definitely have a thought that I want to share. So
I would be happy to. I'm very happy to.
You gotta check this stuff out. I did a video with Philip about the test results of his EMF clothing line, and he's got basically there's a lot of real interesting results that came out of it. So anyway, that's a whole nother topic, but the test results are amazing. That came from just wearing charged EMF clothing. In terms of
without a doubt. Philip and I have talked about this, and the concept, I just finished, things cross paths a lot, and I'm sure it's no coincidence, but I just finished a project developing a product for a group in Austin called Biocharged, and it's biocharged.co. And there you go. It's kind of intriguing because it's
15%.
It's basically working on the other side. What's that?
I just want to point out, you get 15% off. Use this code.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's interesting because it's looking at the pro-oxidative side of things. In the quest to have more energy, you don't necessarily just want to do antioxidant behaviors. You also have to address the other side of the sine wave and look at what you can do with pro-oxidative therapies. And this is, most people don't really buy into the idea of quantum charge, but it's absolutely the basis of everything you're doing. And I actually developed a system to quantumly charge the ozonides that are in the ozonated oil there. You end up with degradation products where your redox potential is zeroed out, but you have a base of ozonides left in the material that are very reactive. And if you charge them, you can get an effect that's 2-3x what you would normally get. And it has to do with, quantum spin of, electrons. You're basically capturing angular momentum spin states and entraining them. And you can get kind of the volume turned up on a specific compound. And what Philip's been doing with, impregnating fabrics using frequencies, it makes perfect sense. I use lasers and dichroic beam splitters to basically create a holographic gel out of the ozonated oil products to lock in specific spin states. Glass from a holographic plate is actually, it's an amorphous solid, so it's more like a liquid, just in a different time scale. And so from the standpoint of, femtosecond pulsed lasers, a gel is far closer to, a holographic plate than most things. But the quantum impregnation of different materials, absolutely 100% I can show with lab data that it definitively makes a difference. And Philip's, impregnation of various fabrics and things like that, I literally use that. I haven't bought any of the clothing yet, but I actually keep in my desk and my lab things that have been quantumly treated, because it's great science. It's just not common science yet.
Yeah.
50 years from now, everybody will understand it.
Oh yeah. Boy, do I have a whole lot of questions about this stuff. I don't know if you, but I am like, for the last 20 something years, my I don't know. I don't know how to even explain it, but my OCD passion has been bioelectrical magnetics and everything to do about all of the research and the all the dead scientists and all of that. I mean, everything from the Lakovsky multi-wave oscillator, Royal Rifle. I mean, all that stuff. And then along comes Philip last year, and he goes, "Hey, Kevin, you got to check this thing out." And then it's like,
I was just
yes,
in a
yeah.
Lakovsky machine.
Oh, cool. Okay. That
Yeah.
thing. I got one at home too. I cranked that up. And by the way, I actually ran into a practitioner, a CTM practitioner that uses it in her practice along with using the violet ray. And she went into deep detail about how she's discovered it works, in the
Oh yeah.
whole concept of Chinese traditional medicine. And yeah, that was a great interview. It's on the channel as well. But okay. So
I'll check that out. My buddy
dude,
Paul
oh, yeah,
Babcock actually built one, and it's
yeah,
a
yeah.
fantastic unit.
It is, and so I've been just fascinated by this stuff, and so I've been tinkering around for years, like everything from making my own orgonite and tensor coils and purple plates and all this stuff, right? And nothing really moved the dial until Philip said, "Hey, you got to try this. You got to check this thing out." And I was like, "Whoa!" And so and it actually has results that you can actually measure, which is real. I'm real left brain when it comes to being able to measure stuff, and so that's what's so cool. After I had that interview with Philip about his test results, I ran out and bought a Decavol, and I just got to teach myself how to use it. But I really want to start playing around with it just from a measurement standpoint and that's from a science standpoint. So yeah, okay. But before we get into that, I do want to talk about the other really big development that popped up in the C60 industry last year, and it's a little bit tied to this. When you talk about like this study, which was that mouse study, it had this little snippet in there where they bought 4 different products, commercial products, and they discovered that the saturation was different. And then Chris from SES did a study where they looked at, I think, 22 products and discovered that even though the benchmark label the benchmark, body study benchmark saturation, which some people will claim is written by God, which is not, is 0.8 milligrams per milliliter, right? I mean, you got some people that argue with me on Facebook that it's the number, it's not possible, and I'm like, yeah, it is possible. Go, but anyway, and so what's interesting, right, is that you have that old, like years ago longevity study where remember everyone, not we, but the 4
Everybody
members,
kicked in.
yeah, they all kicked in and they sent in different, samples. And out of 5 samples, man, the whole, the variance was huge, right? And then you've got,
Right.
SES did a study last spring where they did 22, found the same results. Then you got this study, did 4, found the same results. So, I know, like both of you are C60 oil producers. You're not temporarily, not right now, but you're both
Right.
producers of C60 oil products. I mean, how do you respond to that? Because it's like, my first reaction was to everybody was like, hey guys, you can't trust the labels unless you know it's a credible company that has the means and are testing their output product, and before they mail it out and put a label on it, it is what they say it is. And there's very few of those guys doing that. But so what do you do? And I've been telling everybody, well, you just got to make it yourself so that when you're done and you look at the bottom of the beaker and your filter paper, you know where the C60 went. Other than that, what do you guys, what do you guys say about that? Because, it's pretty bad for the industry when the consumer has no idea what they're getting. Is all their money going to C60, or is it just going to oil? Because, and then of course, if it's just going to oil, which is what these studies show, no wonder people are all like, this doesn't do anything. And they're all like negative about this, the benefits of C60 because they're buying a product that has nothing in it. Anyway, go ahead. What do you guys think?
Well, so from my perspective, I mean, first of all, our product was not purchased here. I know that for a fact. Maybe if we had direct sale on our website, it would have been. But we get our products regularly tested on that, so we won't be under the threshold that we say it is. If we sell an 0.8 product, then it's going to be 0.8, and then if it's 1.0 or 1.2, then it's also that. I can say that, I've been actually wondering myself in the past, and I think Ian will also say something about that, when people sell MCT or coconut oil or MCT coconut oil, for example, and say there's 0.8 in it, then they don't know, they are not able to show you or to tell you how they're actually getting that much C60 into that oil. And we don't know that either, frankly. We only know that from all that we know, it's impossible. We do know, though, it's very possible to get, even 2 grams per liter into olive oil, as an example. So it's, but I would agree, it doesn't represent a great industry standard. So, I think that speaks to the fact that it would be good to have some seal of approval. I don't want to go into that further now, but I think there's some things underway, at least. And I think in general, every producer should, just do some house cleaning and make sure that they don't put anything on the label that they actually can't keep, can't make true.
No, I 100% second that. The reality is there needs to be some sort of standardized, seal of approval or standards that we're all held to, just to ensure safety for people. And I know that some things are in the works on that front. So yeah, I too won't address that, but it needs to happen, and it needs to happen in reasonably short order. And, Philip, I know I've actually sent you my test data before, so that, the claims that I was making about having a, greater than 1.2 concentration, absolutely well founded. I had everything tested by Pierre at Solaris, just to verify it, because I got a lot of pushback from that, but it's not really that difficult to do if you just address the problem with slightly different thinking. Now, coconut oil, that's an entirely different story, because I use a lot of MCT and caprylic acid, which is just the C8 fraction of coconut oil, pretty frequently. And you cannot, and I will definitively state, you cannot get that much in there through normal processes. Even if you heat it to 80C and do, high mechanical shearing and under pressure, just not happening. There's just a certain degree of bond strength that you're not able to elicit in certain lipids, and that's one of them. So, to say that coconut oil is at 0.8, I would very much like to see the test data supporting that, because as of yet, with my own products, I've never seen that. I generally see sub 0.4 mg per mil.
Yeah.
But again, easily done with olive oil. I've done 3.2 as a concentration. It's not terribly difficult.
And that's also one of the reasons why we actually came up with a product that is a mix of MCT and olive oil, where you can get, 0.8 gram per liter in easily with no problem. You get the benefits of the MCT oil that some people, really love and enjoy. And I must agree, there are great properties in that oil, and combine it with olive oil. So that would be, also for the home brewers, really a good way to do that, rather than just using MCT straight.
So longer chain lipids to increase the saturation, bottom line, right?
Yeah, longer chain monounsaturated. Yeah, you're far better off and able to bond more.
Yeah. So you both kind of alluded to the possibility of a industry standards, B governing body, because I've thought a lot about that, and obviously it had to be funded by somebody. And I do know of one effort that is being attempted, but it's being attempted by a producer of a product, which is a significant conflict of interest, in my opinion. But to have an independent third party validating. So, in the meanwhile, best advice to consumers? Anybody know what you're buying?
I think I might actually just say go with groups who are willing to share their data, publish the results, that have verified test data. I think the guys at SES are really good about that, and I know they have their own HPLC. So it's really easy to do when you have access to good testing equipment. Like I've got HPLC, UV-Vis, GCMS. It's really easy to verify stuff when you actually have the tools to do it. Yeah. It's really difficult if you don't have the tools to do that.
Right. Yeah, you would just and common sense if you're going to make a product that you're going to You're gonna
Yeah,
put a
personally,
label
I'm
on
hoping a
something.
very powerful
You'd at least,
secret cabal
yeah.
starts that regulates all of this.
No, I want to say something also in regards to SES. Certainly, they're a great player in the industry, but they're also, running under a conflict of interest. Certainly, in that regard, if they're checking on products that they sell themselves, and we've seen and heard that multiple times actually in the past, so that
Yeah.
they would just say, well, you have to have 99.99% and all that, and just because they were the biggest seller in the world in regards to that. And why? I don't think as an industry we need to do that. And so I think the lab that I really appreciate here in the C60 world is Solaris, because first of all, they're top notch, absolutely know what they're doing, very, very experienced, have been around for a very long time, and they don't participate in the C60 oil production and sales. So from that standpoint, they're a little bit further away, and they have a more neutral perspective. And that's also, for anybody, being a home brewer, for example, that purchases powder or oils or whatever, if you ever wanted to get your products tested, you can certainly do that with Solaris as well, as an example. I mean, it's not cheap, but it's still a lot cheaper than if you were to go to a normal lab that doesn't do it on a regular basis.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I mean, in fact, I was going to ask you, Ian, that in your interview with Luke Story recently, you had actually said that, where when like 'cause people ask all the time. I mean, because they can't afford the 99.99, and and you made a comment, I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that the difference between 99.95 and 0.99 is infinitesimal, and it's not important. So would you?
It's not, and it's important if you have a financial interest in it, but in terms of the actual issue of solvent toxicity from toluene, it's irrelevant. I mean, just the math of it. I mean, if you run the math, if you say, okay, on average you're looking at like 0.8 mg per mil, and you might have 0.05% toluene left over, maybe, after one vacuum pass. And if you're doing 2 passes in a vacuum oven, it's less than that. But even still, that's going to amount to 0.4 mgs in an entire liter. And, toluene is something that your body can process. I mean, it hydroxylates it and turns it into benzyl alcohol. And that's just something that, part of your cells, your cytochrome, actually uses that. So there's a standard clearance rate for toluene, and it's not like you're exceeding that, even if you did 99.5. And really, the reference range there is talking about different higher order fullerenes, not specifically toluene.
Right.
But again, the concentration is so low that you're almost never going to be able to pass the threshold to hit toluene toxicity. I just, if it were an issue, I would be all over it and shouting it from the mountaintops. But you can clear, like, the standard clearance rate is 0.8 mgs per kilogram per day, right? And if you suck down a liter of C60 every day that was horribly produced with 99.5 and not really well vac dried, you might have an issue if you took a liter a day. But if you're not taking a liter a day, then literally your body's clearance rate, as as prescribed by, you can find it on PubMed or anything else.
Right.
There's no issue. It's, from a monetary standpoint, it's great to scare people to say you have to have sublimated or 99.99. Total not accurate physiologically. It's just a bit of a ruse.
Yeah. So so there's 2 issues here, and so let me clarify something, because I was under the understanding that the purity percentage that's sold when you buy raw C60, if it says 99.95 as an example, that means that of the sample, 99.95 is C60, and the other 0.05 is other fullerenes and amorphous carbon. And
That's exactly right.
That's right. So it's not
Correct.
related to the residual solvents, but it's just saying how much of what am I buying is actually C60. So then what you just said was, hey, you know what? If you bought 99, let me know what's the low number, right? Is it
99.5?
99.95, right? Is no problem.
No, not 99.95.
Oh.
That's actually common misconception. I did work and clinical studies in a large cohort of dogs, and used 99.5 as the base.
Wow. Okay.
And all the blood markers were impeccably good. They normalized and corrected themselves.
Yeah.
Metrics that were high became normalized towards low, and metrics that were low normalized towards a high point. So yeah, the idea that you have to have 99.99. Also, if you're talking about higher order fullerenes, as long as you're not talking about nanotubes or something that morphologically, just
Right.
because of the shape is going to have a detrimental impact. Your body, it's carbon, you're going to clear it. Even C60, your body will actually break down over time. And the fractional amounts you're talking about at 0.5,
Right.
it's incredibly low.
Yeah, 0.5.
It's just a non-issue. Yeah,
So
it's just really a non-issue.
Okay, so the 0.5, if you went 99.5, then you got a 0.5 something else, and that something else.
Yeah, C70, C84.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
And I've actually tried to find research on what happens when you take C70 as an example, and now I'm doing research on what happens when you take, fullanols. So bottom line though, you're saying, hey, there's just really no physiological impact from taking amorphous carbons and higher and different fullerenes, as long as they're caged fullerenes. But either way, right?
Yeah, as long as they're caged fullerenes and not nanotubes of some sort. Just because, again, the shape there, I mean, you can think it through. It's not that hard to imagine skewering a cell membrane with a nanotube.
Okay. All right. So I want to wrap up this, what I'm showing on the screen, wrap it up by saying to everybody, correct me if I'm wrong. Hey, you know what? When you're buying C60 oil commercially, just make sure that it's from a source that would willingly share with you their proof that what's on the label is what's in the bottle, until such time that there's some kind of like seal of approval. But just keep that in mind when you're buying C60 oil. You don't know what you're getting unless you're dealing with the people that are going to make sure you're getting what they say they're getting. So that I'll drop that subject. Now, the next subject, though, we're talking about purity, which I think we got a good handle on that. But, Ian, you were talking about solvency, like residual solvents. So let me get your take on that. Because, of all of the C60 industry drama that I gotten sucked into is that whole issue about individuals that sell C60 oil products and claim that they're solvent free. And then, so can I get, what's your opinion about that? Because, is it even possible to synthesize a C60 product without, that's truly solvent free? From all the different means of, even like you were saying, even sublimated, because I believe that even if you sublimate it, you still have other things that was in the graphite, right? That once, because I'm thinking in my mind, right, that you would, even if you sublimate, which means you don't use chemicals, guys, that you would, let's say, you're going to end up with this fullerene soot that you're going to sublimate. But then when you sublimate the soot, right, and then it goes, and I'm just thinking, isn't there going to still be something in there that's going to be whatever was in the graphite? And so there's no such thing as like purity. I mean, that there's no solvents or no heavy metals or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, what do you guys like? This whole solvent free thing has been kind of a debate, and I was just wondering what you guys thought about solvent free, people that advertise solvent free C60 products.
I'll jump in on this one first. I again, with regards to, say, toluene, which is certainly the most common, solvent used to produce C60. In my own arc reactor, even if I didn't use it to separate it through a column after the fact, yeah, it's the graphite that you're using is mostly pure, but it's certainly not 100%. I have yet to see something where there's a singular peak on on the HPLC. There's always a little bit of noise when you zoom in. Same thing with readouts on GCMS. You're not going to isolate something down to perfect purity. At least I have as of yet not seen that. But I don't really think it's an issue. I think again, people, you can test for concentrations of toluene after the fact, and get, nowadays you can get pretty accurate readings down to like 15 ppm and stuff like that, just through doing the urinary methods. But it just doesn't seem like an issue. I mean, I don't want to waste people's time on focusing on something that really is kind of a non-issue. If somebody is really egregious and doesn't vacuum dry something and preps it with toluene, or dichlorobenzene or one of the other things that's far more extreme and harsh, yeah, you could have some issues. But most of the people I know in the C60 space, nobody's doing that. We're all guys who are generally kind of geared towards helping other people and want to produce products that benefit people. I have yet to meet anybody who's, tying somebody to the railroad tracks and producing C60 wearing their black top hat.
Yeah. So Philip, what do you think?
Yeah, so I actually want to quote someone, and that is Pierre, the CEO of Solaris, because I think it's an interesting quote here. Using sublimation is the same base process where C60 is made and purified with solvent. Sublimation is a heating process at very high temperatures. And at these temperatures, C60 can make toxic dimers and trimers and also decompose. These byproducts can be co-deposited during sublimation, as they will also be vaporized. To me, the sublimed grade has most probably toxic byproducts, including dimers, trimers, oxides, and opened fullerenes. I would not use it even for synthesis. People should be made aware.
Wow.
Well, while we're on the topic of issues with sublimation, yeah, I will, in light of Pierre saying that publicly, I'll go ahead and chime in. Having heated, you can sublimate things around 400 C, and having heated stuff in the lab to slightly above those temperatures for prolonged periods, it damages the C60. Like I did that on one batch with a couple 100 grams just to see what would happen and how it would work, and I had to scrap all of it. It just, the chroma were completely improper. When you analyze it after the fact, it was no longer the beautiful, wine colored C60 in olive oil. It became this kind of odd rust burnt orange. And I have the same concerns with some of the synthesis processes other than just purification from, looking at sublimation as a purification technique. Some of the synthesis processes, I have noticed a difference, and I know that they analyze the same way in terms of, when you run them through an HPLC, but there are differences. Like I have a preference.
Wow. Oh, this is fascinating. It's right up my alley. Okay, so that's really cool. I mean, that's really interesting to hear. So solvent-free C60 is negligible from the concept of, the amount, the parts per million, should any residual solvent get carried forward from the process, right? That's kind of the general base.
Yeah, unless somebody is terribly egregious in their preparatory methods and really does not know what the hell they're doing, yeah, you're pretty safe.
So if you're out there buying C60 powder to make your own, or buying a C60 product, and you go on their website and they show you the little fancy graph and says, yeah, it's pure, it's solvent free, here's the graph. It's still, you still don't know quite, for sure, but most likely though, it's not a major.
Yeah, if you find somebody cracking shungite and then putting it in goof off, you might have an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, because I was just okay. So that makes sense. That does. It's the same kind of thing we need to worry about. It's a young industry actually, C60 oil products. So yeah, really interesting. Because I did a whole study on just how residual solvents could exist. There's studies out there for that, and I did some research on that. Yes, it's going to exist. But let me ask you this last question, and I do know that we're running out of time, and I want to be respectful of your time. We're going to have to wrap up in a couple of minutes. But the concept of homeopathy, right? Because this is another argument of the solvent-free crowd. And no disrespect, everybody. I totally respect you for that. But the solvent-free crowd, quotes homeopathy because, the whole idea of like one molecule carries the frequency of the substance and how that interacts with your own frequency, right, as an energy being and all that. So if those solvents do come forward and, and to our biological 3D meat sack, it's not a big deal, right, because we can hydroxylate it. What do you think about residual solvents in terms of that homeopathy concept, because that you are actually taking in do
you want me to answer that first?
Yeah, because you're kind of the guy for this.
Yeah, so obviously that would need to be studied to give a definitive answer, but I do think the concept is pretty clear for homeopathy, and maybe a lot of people don't know that, but you can take spider poison or all kinds of other poisons in a homeopathic form, and then they actually have an absolutely amazing and supportive effect. Certainly, it depends on what you need, what the goal is here, right, and all of that, and then what is the actual substance. But just from a concept perspective, something that would be detrimental to your health if you took it in real physical form could be absolutely fantastic to support you in an energetic form or homeopathic form, for that matter. I just wanted to,
That's cool.
put that out there.
Okay, Ian, what do you think?
100%. Some of the concepts of homeopathy work. If you look at Luc Montagnier's work, the Nobel laureate, it is overwhelmingly compelling. I don't see how anyone can look at his research and not realize that there is a whole lot that's going on vibrationally. I think a lot of people would discount Montagnier, save the fact that he was the guy who isolated the HIV virus and got the Nobel Prize for it. That whole being a Nobel laureate thing carries a little weight. But what Philip was saying is exactly right. Even in India, they've approved homeopathy. The parliament approved homeopathy, and they've got a giant population. They're not going to do something that's not working. I think really the idea that toluene is going to carry a vibration forward, 100% accurate. The idea that anything is going to carry a vibration forward, absolutely accurate. The question is, why, just mathematically, why would the frequency of that small amount of toluene overcome the frequency of the oil or overcome the inherent frequencies of the C60?
Yeah.
And for that matter, if you're really going to get, kind of on the edge of things that are accepted, the impact of that amount of a molecule is probably less impactful than the intent of the people preparing it. And I know that's going to sound terribly woo to a lot of people, but I think science will prove that out, that there's an impact. If you look at Luc Montagnier's work, they're using super precise instrumentation, microphones, and to pick up vibrations and frequencies that people don't commonly think of as impactful.
Yeah.
But they're absolutely 100% making an impact. And you can see it through, Montagnier's being able to transmit data that he records from water that's been, diluted billions of fold, and then transmitting the recorded data to, a colleague in Italy, and then having that fellow use polymerase chain reactions to recreate genetics to 98+% fidelity. That's literally just transmissions from things that read out as water. So the vibrations definitively have an impact. I just don't think in the case of the solvents, is that impact going to overwhelm everything else? Again, I don't really buy it. Not to mention, I haven't seen people complaining, and Kay, you might have seen this more than I. I haven't seen anybody complaining about toluene toxicity. I don't actually know of anyone, nor have I heard of anyone or any animal that's exhibited toluene toxicity.
Yeah. Nope, me neither. Well, if you talk to Bob Greska, he's got clients out there. I've actually tried to reach out to some of them, and they never responded. I don't know why, but just to say, hey, Bob gave me your name, and I was wondering if you could elaborate on what you told him, right? But yeah, in terms of just trying to understand that, people claiming that they had adverse reactions to a C60 oil product. And they attributed it to the fact that it was not a solvent-free, advertised product, then switching to one such as Greska's C60, and then all of a sudden they get better results. And to me, there's so many factors involved in I feel better on this one versus that one, and time of day and year, all that. So it's so anecdotal. I wanted to try to just narrow it down scientifically, but it was impossible. But in my opinion, though, I just think that I personally probably pick up more toxins just from the gas off of the materials in my home than I ever would from the tablespoon of C60 I take every morning. So I just don't worry about it.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, but you have to constantly be, maintain a vigil of detoxing daily like this whole time we're talking, and I wish we had more time to talk about it. I'm connected with a cannula to my Brown's gas generator. So
Yeah, there you go.
I'm inhaling that stuff, 6 to 8 hours a day, taking C60 and all that. But it's, we hit the top of the hour. I know we got to wrap up. And man, this was a great conversation. I've got so many more questions, but thank you guys for your time. I know you need to go. So I just want to say, thank you so much for your time today. Please stay on the line here for a second. But any parting words of wisdom that you want to share with everybody about C60 and where we're at today, 2021? Philip, Ian?
Yeah, so from my perspective, I think everybody that has been experimenting with C60 is a pioneer in that regard, right? So we do know there's a lot of facts pointing to this being an absolutely amazing molecule, and it's growing. So yeah, keep experimenting with it, keep researching it, keep talking about it, and I think for the whole industry as a whole, I hope that we will just create more studies, that we also partner more together in general, rather than trying to segment out and try to win market share. I think this industry, from my perspective, should be different. This is about humanity, and about something great that is around, that we've all discovered and are discovering. So let's rather work together. And I think in other countries, especially Europe, for example, certainly one of the great next steps would be in the next few years to get some approvals from the authorities to actually use it. This may be difficult to achieve, certainly because of different interests, but that would be something just as an outlook also for the industry, where I would hope that we're headed.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. So, and then Ian, I noticed that your website has yet to be filled out.
Yeah, it's kind of intriguing, okay, because I've been very busily working and consulting on projects that I'm ridiculously passionate about. So most of the people who are engaging me already know where I'm at. But yeah, I expect that it'll be filled out. Parting words of wisdom for people in the C60 space, I would just kind of do a quick risk-benefit analysis. It's been my experience that the pros greatly outweigh the cons, and I'm obviously in wholeheartedly. And I think time is going to prove out that there's a tremendous amount of beneficial effects. And my only regret in a lot of this is that I didn't start the process a decade before I did. I wish that I, had known the benefits that I would have seen over time, because in my own life, it's been very positive and really tremendously impactful. So for the rest of the community, I'd say, keep the faith, keep doing it. If at some point one of us in the research space determines that there is something that is bad, we're going to shout it from the mountaintops. At this point, as you pointed out, I'm no longer producing any particular thing. So for me right now, it's just pure research. At some point, I expect that I will go back into the space in hopefully the near future. But I wouldn't recommend anything that I thought was going to be detrimental to people, but I really would implore people to just continue to do this, because the science is going to back it up. And if people wait, a longevity study for humans, the data is going to be coming in over the next few decades. It's not going to be something that comes in quickly. And if you wait, for a study to be resolved in 50 years, you're likely going to have missed the boat. So,
yeah, definitely. Okay, so thank you guys. Thank you so much. So, Ian, you've got a new endeavor. You're doing science research. Obviously, your new website's called Mitchell Sciences. It's in development right now. For those of you guys that want to follow Ian, it's mitchellsciences.com. And then you have a current product. It's called Biocharged. And if you look, I'll put it in the link. There's Ian did I think it was in October, an interview with Dave Asprey from Bulletproof about this new product, and that was fantastic. It was real interesting. So if you're interested in Ian's new product there, I'll link to the video that talks about it. And then for Philip, Leela Labs, Leela Labs and Leela Q. And so you've got two different, I'll put links for all of this stuff out there. If you want to reach out to these guys, that's where you will find them. So
awesome. Thanks, Kay.
hey, thanks a lot. I'm
Thank
going to
you,
end
Kay.
the recording now and hang on. Okay. But thank you everybody. And thanks for watching the video.